Welcome to Faith in Five with Cecil and Cecil. Thank you so much for joining us. I hope you enjoyed today's episode, and we're so glad that you're here to fellowship with us. Welcome to episode 22 of Faith in Five with Cecil and Cecil. And today we're going to kind of be taking the thoughts that you may see a lot about on social media of being a minimalist and doing some decluttering. I know it's not spring for spring cleaning, but maybe we do some fall cleaning right before school time hits back with the kids and kind of get rid of some things as we prepare for, in my house, fall sports for the kids. So we're going to kind of take that mentality of minimalism and decluttering and see how that may apply in a spiritual sense. And so today the scripture is Hebrews chapter 12, verse 1. Although I'm just going to read verse 1 through 3 because it's kind of all together in a context. But Hebrews chapter 12, verse 1. Therefore, since we also have such a great cloud of witnesses surrounding us, let's rid ourselves of every obstacle and the sin which so easily entangles us. And let's run with endurance the race that is set before us, looking only at Jesus, the originator and perfecter of the faith, who for the joy set before him endured the cross, despising the shame, and has sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. For consider him who has endured such hostility by sinners against him, so that you will not grow weary and lose heart. So I think there's a lot there. The not growing weary and losing heart at the end is a good ending for that. But we're really kind of focusing on what my version says is ridding ourselves of every obstacle. And I think it's interesting that it kind of separates out obstacle and sin. I wrote down in my notes for this one that, I think there's some versions, I think maybe your version that you're reading talks about laying aside every weight.
Yes.
And so not all those weights are sins necessarily. And so it does say, laying aside the weights and then also the sin. So, I mean, any type of idolatry can kind of become a sin. So anything that might be a weight could be a sin. But also there are things that just get in our way in day-to-day lives that are weights that we let weigh us down that we should just get rid of, that is blocking us from something that's maybe God's intention. So that's kind of what I'm looking at. This is, getting rid of that obstacle, getting rid of that weight that is causing us not to pursue the life and purpose that God has for us. There is some type of minimalism and decluttering that I think God expects from us as Christians. I don't know, what do you have to say about all that?
Well, I've got two extreme examples, extreme on two different sides. One is that in the Sermon on the Mount in Matthew chapter 5 and verse 20, Jesus said that if your right hand is leading you into hell, you should cut it off. Now that would be laying aside a weight or getting rid of an obstacle. Of course, we always warn people to not take that too literally. But on the other hand, when you think about it, what Jesus said was, it's better to enter into life one-handed than into death, with both your hands. So that's an extreme example on one side. If your hand is leading you into sin, cut it off. The other example is one. It was a speaker named Dick Weber. He used to be big on the youth circuit back in the day, and he had been on the Olympic team, had tried out for the Olympic teams. And one of the things that he claimed that he did and that others did as well, he was a runner, is they would take their shoelaces and they would split the shoelace just because they were trying to get rid of every weight that they could possibly get rid of so that they could be faster, even down. So on one hand, we have this extreme cutting off your hand, on another, splitting a shoelace to get rid of that weight. But, I do think these days when I watch Olympic runners and they have the jewelry that they wear and sometimes the long flowing hair and other decorations that they have that obviously are important to their persona, I do think about Dick Weber and him trying to get rid of every weight so that he could run as best as he could run.
Yeah, those are good analogies. We have somebody there who wants to say hi.
That's all right. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So, yeah, I think those are those are great examples. Yeah. So, I mean, just from a practical standpoint for us, one of the things that Emma and I have talked about some lately is just like the amount of stuff we have and how overwhelming it is. And one thing that I guess I've learned, and I'm trying to teach my kids now. For those that don't know, I've got 3 boys, 13, 9, and 7. So as you can imagine, there's YouTuber influences and people with cars, people with jewelry, people with big houses. One thing that you learn as an adult is you got to maintain and clean all those things. So
Yep.
there's a lot that goes into ownership of something. And so if it's not really bringing you joy, if it's not really bringing you and leading you towards the purpose of your life and things that are really important to you, it really is better just to not have it, because it is a lot of time and commitment and money to maintain anything, whatever that is. And so getting rid of some of that clutter in your life, spiritual and physical, gives you more time for the things that are important, which are God, church, family, career, not taking away from the things that you really have focus on and need to focus on. I think that's I think God. I think there's lots of messages in the Bible about that from God of getting rid of the waste.
The eventual purpose, as you read those verses, is we want to be in the end in the presence of God by His throne, and anything that would keep us from getting there is to be gotten rid of, because that is the thing.
Yep. And I think a race is, obviously the perfect example, right? And splitting those shoelaces, because it does talk about endurance. Like, it uses the word endurance. It uses the word race. So this isn't a sprint that we're going to get to quick. It is an endurance. And so you really do, for those that may be like backpackers, I'm jealous of. I think that would be a cool thing to be into, like backpack into the country and spend the night and only take what you need. I mean, you do cut all the weight that you can. You cut all the fat that you can, because you don't need those things, and it just makes everything more difficult. So I think that's a big takeaway for me, is just, those things may be causing difficulty in your life, and it may just be time to cut them off.
Yep.
Cut the weight.
Let it go.
Anything else you want to add there to close out?
Let it go.
Let it go. All right. Well, thank you all for listening, and please come back and listen some more. Thank you.